do is let Claire go ahead and present. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and ask a few questions and we'll open up the floor to Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can also write them in the chat and we'll address those once Claire's presentation is come to an end. So yeah, without further ado, I'll let Claire share.
Okay. So I think I'm already on screen sharing. I'm not sure if that's showing. Let's see, here we go.
It is showing.
Great. I'm not often a presenter, so I'm going to get a little used to this first. But first, I want to thank everybody for being here. It's so sweet of you to come and spend time with us when I know everybody is so busy. So thank you so much for coming and being here. As Esther said, I was an early digital pioneer artist who made work completely in the computer pretty early on. Whoops, trying to get, there we go. Pretty early on. I started in 1995. The early work was done with Illustrator and graphic software programs, not really meant to be used as for artwork making. I also have been very interested in always experimenting with materials, which you'll see as we go on as well. I decided the way I started doing this work was because I lost my studio in 1994. My mother passed away and I lost the studio in the same month. And I just didn't feel like I was up to trying to find a new studio, both financially and emotionally. And so I decided to try to instead use the materials at hand, which at that time was a Macintosh Quadra. So I started working and you'll see that the work gets more and more complex as the titles change. The titles are in our saves, versions of the saves of each piece, and usually it's the minimum number of saves. So I might have gone down one path and then come back, done a bunch of saves, done a bunch of things, come back, and then go down another path and then come back. The nice thing about working digitally was there was never a concern with, generally, except for when your computer crashed, there weren't as many concerns about ruining something. You could always go back and recover it. But I was pushing this new medium, and in pushing it, I did end up having some crashes. And you'll see in this piece, this was created by a computer when it crashed, the Macintosh Quadra. When it crashed, the processors were not very robust at that time, but when it crashed, I was kind of excited by this beautiful error pattern, which the computer created on its own. So I would then save, anytime the computer crashed, I would then save the error pattern and then go back, work on the last save, continue working on the work, and created an entire palette sort of error patterns, which I also continue to manipulate over time. So they were just another means, another tool, another thing to incorporate into the work. And you'll see in this next work that I began to incorporate the error patterns into the images, into the image. And you can see, I'm not sure if my cursor shows up, but you can see the error pattern in the background area and manipulated in the front, in sort of the middle ground area. So this shows also, this is another, this in the middle part is another manipulation of that error pattern. And this, the stripes on the right-hand side with the white in between is actually another error pattern that happened while working in the computer. The other wonderful thing was I realized I could create masks and create tondos or circular paintings. And with that in mind, I created several tondos. But then when I was asked if I could do an edition for the Aldrich Museum of Art, I thought, well, I didn't want to do something that was just printing a painting that I'd already created. I really wanted to expand on what I was doing and also show what was behind the mask of a circular painting. So for the Aldrich Museum, I removed the mask, and you can see on the right-hand side, though, that is all the work that happened behind the mask revealed. So I did just retitled it as an edition for Revealed. And that was a print edition I did for them. In 2005, I started to hand paint varnish in this little area. You can see this little blue line across the top third of the painting. And a big influence of a lot of my work has been my job. At this time, I was a print production manager, and the invitations I would create I would always play with these varnishes on matte paper, so that there would always be this nice richness and two-dimensionality that I found super exciting to play with, both then at my job and then also in the paintings. And you can see the varnishes, and here's a lot of the error pattern here as well. And here is the varnish. This is all hand done on top of the printed canvas pieces. So as the work became more, as I started doing more and more handwork on the paintings themselves, I also decided to start doing additional handwork in the studio that I would then scan. So in this painting, Light Folded, when you go to, I'm going to go through all the elements that actually ended up creating this painting. So first I took a blurry photograph of a lotus pod and then brought it into Photoshop and manipulated it. And then I'd seen a really beautiful Turner show at the Met, and I then manipulated, then painted, did a sketch, a drawing, and a painting of this piece. And then I had yet another error pattern, which had been from a different computer crash. And then I brought them all together with additional digital work to create the final artwork. And this was a new way of taking the work further. In the next one, in Fall into Winter, I took a mushroom from the internet and smoke from the internet, and then did a small drawing, painting actually, and then took also photographs looking up into trees. I removed the sky so that it was white, and then used that negative space to create. Now you see in Fall into Winter, you have the painting of the mushroom. It's on the right, it's behind everything. The smoke is behind on the left. The tree sky that looks like snow is on the foreground. And then there's additional computer work, drawing in the computer in the, I'd say, middle ground. I continued to expand on these types of ways of working and found they did keep getting more and more complex. With drift, I took a photograph in the Catskills of a tree that had fallen, a photograph of the lily pads at Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, and did a compilation collage of these in the computer, and then started doing a bunch of paintings, various versions, and a drawing of all these items, and then brought them all together with additional Photoshop or various software programs to create a new composition using all these items and layers. And still remains, I started with a photograph taken in California of an oak tree and my nephew's grave, as well as, and then composed a background pictures, another photograph from California. Did a composition again of a collage made of all three of these. Took another small painting and then air patterns, which I had filled into a painting. And yet another painting, made another painting from the photographs, manipulated and played with the scans of the painting and putting the error patterns into spaces within that, using negative space again. And then you have kind of the compilation, which is selections from various pieces of all of those here. The one thing that I also love to play with is when people think something is painted and it's not. So this big red area on the right-hand side is actually purely digital, even though it looks like it's painted. So there's always a play of materials between what you think it might be and what it actually is. In Wraith, I took a texture from a book jacket and manipulated the color. So it's this wonderful linen texture, which is quite beautiful. And then I started becoming very interested in jellyfish. Jellyfish for me are a symbol of climate change or the climate crisis. It's both a beautiful and poisonous animal, and it increases in number as the water heats up and becomes more polluted. So where in a dead zone in the ocean, fish and other animals die, the jellyfish actually thrives. So it is blooming, and despite our climate, there's actually becoming so many jellyfish that fish don't get crowded out. So they're a bit of a parasite that does well in our climate crisis. I then was actually inspired by the Gauguin Metamorphosis show at MoMA, which had him experimenting with a lot of amazing printmaking and painting techniques, and decided to start trying to do my own lino cuts. So this is a lino cut I made of the jellyfish from the website image. And here is the print, the actual print of the lino cut with some painting on top. And then I scanned it and isolated one jellyfish. I also took photograph of mushroom fungus on a tree, and mushrooms are actually they're actually good for the environment, and they break down toxins and absorb carbon, keeping carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So this is something that's actually helping the climate crisis. I then did a collage sort of drawing, painting of this same fungus, manipulated it, scanned it, manipulated it in the computer, manipulated it further. Then took a small painting of a fig tree I made in my backyard. And you'll see this is my studio with a bunch of drawings in the studio and a cat. And then I took this error pattern, which was I think one that I created from other error patterns, and then filled that into the branches from the painting of the fig, obviously manipulating it, changing it a bit as I went. And then, because again, I've been obsessed with jellyfish, I then took another jellyfish image from the internet and did a painting of it. And then took that same painting, which I scanned, manipulated, and then filled with another pattern. And that became the wraith. So if you look at wraith, you can see the repeat at the top of the 3 jellyfish, the linen material that was red changed to red in the background, the branches in sort of a middle ground. The mushroom manipulation is a little harder to see, but you can and then you see the last jellyfish in the foreground. You can see sort of the whole process of the work. In charade, again, more jellyfish. I took this was just a printout from the internet, which I painted, but the actual jellyfish was my inspiration for several drawings and paintings for this, which I then scanned and brought back into, well, this is actually another jellyfish as well as a painting on top of it. So this I scanned also. And this was a painted aluminum, which was inspired by Dubuffet. It was created for a tidal wall idea. Started with Dubuffet. I think that we ended up using it for Miro, but it is flattened aluminum painted. And that was from a woman who we hired to work with us on textures for walls. I scanned that and incorporated that back into the jellyfish, and also purchased a stencil on the left, and then created a stencil adapted from that stencil on the right because it wasn't large enough for what I wanted. And you can see the stencils as well. And hopefully you can see kind of everything in there. I know it gets a little tough to see all the different layers, but they're there. And then finally with Target, which was a more recent work, which started because I had floods in my basement. Had never had flooding in my basement before. And then we had 2 floods within like 2 weeks in 2021. And it damaged my work, a bunch of old work of mine. So then I thought, well, how can I do something with this? So I took the old work and I mounted it on linen and then started painting on top of it, doing a lot of different things on top. This is a cedar that's going extinct in Alaska. And then in the end, what I love about this painting is that it really looks like it's been unearthed from a flood or from some sort of disaster. It has all this texture, all these different layers, that it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, but it's rich with detail. And this last one, this is from this past year. At my job, we have silk screeners that had a wonderful business that had been helping us for years do silk screening on the actual walls for text, went out of business after COVID. And I realized that in order to get silk screeners that would be good again, I really should learn the process myself. So I took some silk screening classes with a wonderful studio in Bushwick called Better Than Jam. A great woman named Corinne who teaches me privately and works with me privately because I don't have all the equipment at home. And so for her, one of our studio sessions, I first took another error pattern. I changed the color, manipulated it, and then I also took this, it's a metallic ink that when I was washing the lino cut in the sink, the palette from the lino cut inking in the sink, it created this beautiful kind of luminescent stuff on top of the water. And so I just grabbed a piece of paper and stuck it on top to kind of collect it, and then photographed it. And mixing those two together is the background of what I added to it, which is this photograph of a California fire, which I'm a native of California, and these fires, which have become sadly yearly, now it's fire season, yearly, I just felt they were just so upsetting, but also kind of amazing looking at the same time, similar to the jellyfish, like beautiful and poisonous and scary, and convert it to a halftone screen for silk screening. And then you can see the error pattern, the metallic ink mess sort of in the sink, as well as the silk screening on top. And then last, I don't know if this will work on my, don't know if it's going to work actually, my PDF. I was going to show you a little quick video of actual silk screening, but we had some technical problems and it looks like I'm not able to show that right now. But that is pretty much, I know I went fast, but I was kind of hoping that way we could have some questions at the end and chat.
Yeah.
Open it to people.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. I just wanted to say I love the juxtaposition of the natural world and the digital world. And the more that I look at your work, the more I realize that we exist within this natural landscape, but we also exist within this digital landscape. So it's not really a juxtaposition in the modern day and age that we live in currently. So I like really appreciate that merging of the two within your work. And I was really curious because you started doing digital work in '95, you said, what software you were using, and then just like how because digital art maybe wasn't taken very seriously at the time, and now everything's changed so much. What are some of the biggest differences that have affected your practice?
Well,
It's a lot
digital
of
art
questions.
Digital art was definitely looked down upon when I started, and I couldn't get anyone to come to my studio. No one was interested. So instead of telling them I was working digitally, I would simply say, come see my paintings. And then they would come and be confused. Like, what exactly? These? Although I did notice a huge difference between painters who would get right up close and really stare at the work versus um, mixed media artists or video artists who really weren't, that would not get close, would not really look super hard at the surface, and they sort of accepted them immediately as paintings. But it was the painters that really like, what is this exactly, and would get like this close up. And I've always considered myself a painter, so they were kind of my main audience, although I appreciate now, especially over time, how those categories have broken down a lot. But it was very hard to get anyone to come to the studio. It was very hard to get the work shown. And I think it took, there were a few people who supported me early on who understood what I was doing. And honestly, thank God, for them. And it always kind of made me laugh. I tell this so that anybody who's ever applied for a grant doesn't take failure too seriously, because I applied for the digital grant from NIFA for 10 years before I got it, despite the fact that I was working as a digital artist very, very early on. So, be perseverant is what I can say for anyone. Don't ever take those failures too seriously, or those rejections, I should say, too seriously. And you asked me
Thanks,
what the
Claire.
software, yeah, the software programs
Oh,
you
yeah.
said. Sorry if in case I forget one of the questions, but the software programs I used were Illustrator, Painter, and Photoshop primarily. Although I also made a few small animations with the After Effects as well, which I didn't show today, but
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your process. I'm gonna ask one more question and then we'll go through the chat and we'll open it up. Um, so you work in so many different mediums, and with the mixed media, I'm curious how you negotiate the layering of so many different mediums, from like the natural world to the digital world, and like, so do you condense it all on the computer, create the composition, and then screen print it? Or is it different every time?
I think it's different every time. I mean, the great thing about the computer is what I found is sometimes once you scan something into the computer, like a painted drawing or anything that has traditional materials, I find that the scanning actually amplifies the texture. So more so than your naked eye would see the texture. So what I love is once I've scanned it, the texture in some ways becomes more visible than what I'm seeing when I have the paper in front of me. That's an exciting thing to play with and push. And you can push it even further in the computer often with, various tools in Photoshop to make the texture be more visible, or you don't even have to because it's already there. But what's wonderful is that in Photoshop, you can work in layers. When I was in college, I was very interested in collage as well as painting. And I find that working in Photoshop is very much like collage all over again, because you have all the different layers. You can move them all around. You can collapse them. You can do anything. You can select things. There's just so much freedom in working, for me at least, that way. So each piece is different. With a lot of the silk screening, I'm creating something in Photoshop, printing it myself, and then being prepared for my time in to do the silk screening. But I'm also using found things. I've used found objects in the work, found fabric, found wallpaper, or I was given a bunch of wallpaper at my job that was rejected. I'm doing a print edition on that. So it's I'm sort of open to whatever. Like, I just believe in being flexible, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Okay, so yeah, that answered my question. There's a few questions here. Anna says, how do you mount the paperworks on linen?
Well, luckily, because I work in a museum, I consulted with a conservator at the museum on how to do that, and learned. I'm going to forget the name of the material right now. There's a material that the conservators use to mount when they're either repairing a painting or when they're mounting anything on the linen that is reversible, but is also holds it to the linen, so it's archival. And if I remember it and there's a place for me to respond, I can tell you later. I have a roll of it here, but anyway, so I was able to get good advice and have the conservator at the time help me learn how to do it, and so now I just do it myself. But you can order the material from
Nice.
from a place in Brooklyn, that
Okay.
paper place, Brooklyn on Metropolitan. I'm forgetting the name.
Also,
Sorry.
oh, that's okay. That's okay. Anna is also asking what your day job is and if that's where you get your inspiration from. And I think earlier you said you had worked in printing
Yeah, I
at some
actually,
point.
I actually do get a lot of inspiration from my day job. I think it's from my day job that made me sort of curious about various techniques. In the beginning, my day job is I work at the Museum of Modern Art in the graphic design department. And I've been there for over 20 years. And I've worked on every single exhibition the Museum of Modern Art has put on for, well, I'll be honest, over 25 years. So I know that ages me, but that experience has made me not only, like, I started out when printing was more popular, I'll say, digital was very nascent at the time I started that job. Printing was something I did more of, and that's why the varnish came into the printed work, because of the invitations, as I said, trying to create like beautiful invitations that had more than just a printed surface. You could see a change between the varnish and the paper. And as time went on at my job, it evolved, and I became responsible for more and more production of all kinds of things, whether it was artists' work, wallpapers, photographs. I've sort of become the production person for all the reproductions that are made for the museum, as well as artists' actual works, where I'm given files from artists and I've had to create their works for them. So in all that, not only am I thinking about the artwork I'm seeing, as I mentioned, the Gauguin or Turner, what was at the Met instead, but any art I'm seeing, I'm thinking about. I think I really became very enamored of Picasso's use of color. There's all kinds of things I've been influenced by. And I even have some paintings that I've shown to people. And then I had one painting, I didn't show this today, where I had a studio visit with another artist who literally said, "Oh, I see Jackson Pollock's Blue Poles in that painting." And I had just worked on the Pollock show. So obviously it's coming into my head all the time. But as I said, like the silk screening, because I had to figure out a way to get the silk screening done on the walls, that's how I ended up taking the silk screening class. So certainly all these materials that I've had to know how to use or know how to oversee or simply seen in exhibitions and other artists using them, I would say have influenced me. Did that hopefully answer her question?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds like an incredible resource for inspiration and um, creative education. It looks like Carol has her hand up. Carol, you can
Hi.
unmute yourself and if you want to talk. Hi.
Hi, Claire. It's
Hi,
nice.
Carol. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you here. So, I've been following your work for a long time and we've spent time together. And I'm really very appreciative of how you personalize your gathering of natural elements and how that is sometimes balanced by collecting error messages and incorporating those. And I feel like you're probably like 25 years ahead of your time when you started doing that, because there's a lot of artists now that are using error messages from digital and making them into personalized paintings and things like that. So I'm wondering, like I'm thinking of Lovid. I'm friends with those people, and so I'm wondering, are you planning to still inventory and collect error messages and putting them in your work?
Well, if they happen,
Uh-huh.
I mean, they don't happen as much now because the computers are so much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it used to happen a lot to me where these error patterns would happen and I would lose everything I was doing. I'd saved, but maybe I forgot to save for the last, 4 hours. So I would lose 4 hours worth of work, but then I would get this error pattern. And often they were beautiful. So I was like, well, let's use it, lemonade from lemons. I just don't get as many error patterns anymore.
So you're yourself. So you're very organic. So because it's not organically presenting itself, you're not necessarily gonna go out and find them.
Well, I don't, first of all, I have like a huge supply of them from,
Okay.
I mean, I have like, I have all the error patterns that happen naturally. And then I have probably, 10 times that I then created from those.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of have like I have shelves, so to speak,
Yeah.
of error patterns to choose from. And I guess I would just feel weird creating one from nothing,
Yeah.
like it didn't really happen. So I don't know. It just wouldn't feel true in some way to me, but that doesn't mean I won't do it. If I get inspired and decide to make one,
Well, I feel like you're very true to yourself as a collector of things. You collect the things that strike you as being organically within the realm of what you want to engage with, and that's very good. So, yeah, I understand.
well, now I have to go look up these people. So maybe you should
Oh,
send me.
Logan?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know them.
it's Tally Hinkes and her husband Kyle. So, yeah, and they're always at the end of trying to humanize the collected error material that they get from video and what they do with it, and they print it on fabrics. So they're trying to humanize it more and make it more approachable for us. But you're already taking things from the natural world and showing them to us again, and there isn't that dryness to it. It's very easily understood and easily embraced. That's what I would say. Your work.
Yeah, I'm making the error. I'm incorporating the error into the natural.
Yeah.
Like they're friends, so to speak. They
It's
live
so,
in the same
it's
world.
so great
And
to see what you're doing. It's so great to see it here.
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I love how that, can speak to the idea that imperfection is beautiful and natural within the concept.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for Claire?
Jody has her hand up, and
Ah,
after Jody, I'm going to raise my hand because I have questions.
Okay. So it was so amazing, Claire, to see you unpack the layers of these complex paintings. And it was, so beautiful to see the paintings that were kind of the source material, like the paintings of trees and the prints of the jellyfish. And I'm just wondering about the status of those works. Like, are they just preparatory for you for the final picture, or do they have their own presence for you as artworks in their own right? Would you ever think about showing them with the works to kind of unpack, like in an exhibition space, the source material? So just curious about that.
I would totally show it as source material. I think personally, I love seeing that when I go to a show. I don't, I probably wouldn't show something that I just thought looked absolutely awful, but but most of it, it's all getting to a place, and I feel like I so enjoy understanding how an artist works. I remember in the de Kooning show at MoMA, there was one of the first pieces had these little thumbtacks in the painting. And I just loved that, like, we still saw the thumbtacks in the piece. So I'm not so precious about them that I wouldn't show them. I would definitely show them because I think it shows I think the process is always interesting for every artist. And I like all the different materials that come together in anybody's work. So yes, I think it'd be fun, honestly, to show all that so that people can sort of pick it apart and figure it out. And even like I could have done, we only had a certain amount of time, but the problem when I show it all together is like I can't show you the separate layers. Like on a piece of paper or something for somebody, I still have all of my files. So I still have, I keep the files in layered form. So at any time I can just show each layer, like you could literally take it apart, show each layer, show the drawing or painting that it was derived from, and then show the final piece so that it could be even more unpacked than what I showed. Does that make sense?
That's amazing to like that you have that as a resource for when you want to kind of look back at it.
Well, and then also I can steal from my old work. If I want to take a layer from, I really liked that thing I did 10 years ago. If I want to go take a layer from that one layer from a painting that had 20 layers, I can go grab that one layer and put it somewhere in a new piece. So there's wonderful kind of flexibility there as well.
Yeah.
Kelly, you're muted.
I'll figure this out one day. Claire, I love the rendering, painterly rendering of computer, just the whole idea of like computer glitches and digital material, however that comes to you, and how it's been either painted or it's been gone through the various processes that you're using in conjunction with all these natural forms and natural quote unquote natural, I mean, from nature, images inspired by plant life, etc. and how you've just woven all of this together, not just as subject matter, but as components of your work and different layers in the process. And in the, ultimately everything kind of shows through in the final product. Do you view your digital source material, quote unquote, as part of nature? Do you view like computer glitches and whatnot as natural phenomenon? And I have a follow-up to that once you think about that.
I think you have to ask yourself what is natural, and if man creates something digital, is it natural? Like if man makes a machine, is it a natural thing? You know what I mean? Like we are natural. If we create something, therefore, is it not natural? That's the only way I can think of it, is that if we made it, then it's natural, right? So I would say that it's certainly natural to our lives today. It's certainly a part of our lives today. It's hard to think of it as anything that couldn't be considered natural, although it is obvious. I mean, and here's the scary part, of course. I mean, there's a whole long conversation we could have about AI, but like, what does that mean for the future? Like, where are we going? What is next? In terms of, like it was only 29 years ago or whatever that I started working with the computer, and now we're in a completely different place, and who knows what will come up next. And is AI natural? I mean, that's kind of a scary thought to me. So I don't really have totally answers except for that I don't think of the error patterns as unnatural, because it definitely happened naturally while I was working. I don't know. Does that, I don't know if I have.
No, I think it answers the question. And I did want to follow up at some point. I wasn't sure if it was going to tie in with this question about AI, and I didn't want to conflate AI with just technology in general, because I think it's such a specific thing. But regarding your tools and the tools that you've been using during your career, and maybe perhaps the ones that, I don't know if it's changed or evolved over time, do you find that the digital tools, I mean, I'm a digital artist and have been a commercial like graphic artist and animator in the past, and I find that the constant dealing with digital tools, the software, hardware, all of that stuff, learning things, is often really, really overwhelming. And I know it is for many people, to the point where one can become like really just a technician who's really good at running whatever software. And I'm just curious if you ever get bogged down with the technology that you're using, or if you just kind of, like surf the wave and deal with, and kind of incorporate whatever happens, and kind of make your way through it. So basically, like, at what level is like your digital tools, or any tools for that matter, is it like a hindrance, or more than it is a benefit to you?
I think it's 50-50. Like I still love the materiality of things outside of the computer, and I still love working both with, in my studio with my hands in that way, as well as on the computer with my hands that way. The one thing that really upset me, though, was when I was getting ready to start submitting for the viewing room, I ran into some huge problems with technology. And that was because the Macs no longer support CDs, and I had backed up, a decade or more worth of work on CDs, and I could not find any Mac computer that would read my CDs. Luckily, my husband's computer is so old that I was able to run CDs on him. And download a bunch of the files, but it was really, I was a bit late on your deadlines for the viewing room because I ran into all these technical problems that I had not anticipated. You know, why would they stop making CDs readable on a Mac computer? I do not understand this kind of thinking. So yes, there are definitely times when I'm totally frustrated by technology, and other times when I'm thrilled by how, fast it makes things. But I do also like the option of working in the studio with traditional materials. So I like it all.
Yeah, great. And we like that you like it all as well. Just to tie in really quickly to that, a personal anecdote, I used to work at MoMA myself before your time, believe it or not. And I worked in the research library and the book artist book cataloging project after they'd made a big acquisition there. And we were in discussion about library people were discussing how to keep records for posterity and with technology and et cetera. And me being a very young person, I was like, you should put it all on CDs. Like that would just, they last forever and they take up no space. And then everyone kind of was like, yeah, but in 20 or 30 years, like, are those CDs going to be any good? We just don't know. And I thought, you don't know what you're talking about. Technology will just win out over the, in the end. And there you are talking about your CD CD archive being obsolete. But we're glad you got the images off, and we appreciate it. Yeah.
But I have more work to do. I mean, I have notebooks full of CDs, and what I really need to do is find somebody to translate all of those onto like a hard drive that hopefully doesn't die,
I see some question. Michelle Black has a question.
Well, I've been seeing Claire's. Hello, Kelly. Hello, everyone. I've been seeing your work on my phone for the last week, Claire. Amazing work, and I've been staring at it and making the screen bigger, trying to figure out what is going on here. And I just know I love the compositions, the colors, the whole arrangement. I don't think I really care what it's made of so much as I'm just fascinated by the compositions and the colors and the textures and the relationships of everything. So I just want to say congratulations, as I figured I was outside painting in the dark before and I came running in, but I really wanted to see you and hear a little bit what you had to say, because your work is so amazing. And of course, Black Ball Project, I was a former recipient of this grant, and it's been amazing for me, and I'm sure it will be amazing for you. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I decided to talk about process because I just felt it was going to be boring if I just said, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. But it's nice to hear what you said, that like you didn't care about the process. So I'm glad, without even knowing about process, you might still like the work. But I have to talk about something. So
yes, thank you. Yeah. It's just I was just referring back to the fact that some people might say, is this more prestigious because it's actual physical paint, or is it computer generated? And to me, it seemed like it had a high value either way.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear.
Yes.
It's approaching or just past the 8 o'clock hour. If there are any more questions, please ask them now. We're live with Claire. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap it up pretty soon. Anything, while maybe people are collecting, any final questions, if any? Esther, any thought? Oh, Elizabeth has a hand up, and I'm gonna ask Elizabeth to unmute. Elizabeth, free to unmute. There you go.
There, thank you. This is a quick one. Having you isolate the elements within your layering process was incredibly helpful for me, because I've always appreciated efficiency in making. I'm a Luddite, and I paint paintings with wet stuff from scratch. But watching you isolate your elements, just it explained what I've always appreciated in your work, which is a depth of narrative field. That's my general euphemism for a depth of narrative field. No matter what I'm looking at, if it has that, I can go inside the picture. And hearing you explain that was wonderful. And I wanted to ask you about the importance of reverie, which is for a lot of people, it's a slower experience, and it tends to come up relationally in traditional landscape work, and it has to do with the internal speed of. I'm saying picture. You may say image. I go back to painting, but all of these forms are kind of asking for just a little bit more from my perspective. And so I wanted to ask you about your relationship to reverie, because I know how you have to maximize the kind of time you have for the studio. I'm working full time myself on the job, so it's.
I know you are.
I mean, pass each other like ships in the night, you know. So I guess I hope you understand my question, because it kind of, I move through your work slowly, and I love that I am allowed to do that. And hearing you, as Jody said, unpack the layering process. Oh, that's why I'm having this experience that is so, it's you know, an intimate reading experience. So that's why I wanted to ask you about where you sit in relationship with reverie, which is kind of a quiet or can be a more meditative experience.
Well, I definitely think, I mean, I'm not trying to make fast work. I can definitely say that. Sometimes it's frustrating because you're like, you know, I didn't produce that much X year, you know, like some years I just don't make that much work, and it's very frustrating because I feel so, you know, how come that's all I got done? But I really like making, I like detail. I don't want to just do something, you know, if something does happen quickly and it's still great, fantastic, but generally my work just seems to be more complex and take longer. And I think, you know, I'm totally fine with that. You know, I know I'm totally fine with that. I think I've had to come to terms with that, which is hard when you're working full time, because you know that you only have X many hours a week to work. But I do find that if I hang stuff up in the studio and I spend time with it, things come to my head, you know. If I rushed through things, I don't think other ideas would come. Sometimes I just have to stare at something before I can solve a problem or find my next avenue. Does that make sense? Like, definitely.
Yes, it
slow.
does.
A slow experience is what I'm hoping for from my viewers, to be honest. I don't want them to look at it, be done, and move on. And that's maybe sort of my biggest problem with titles too, is I'm always worried a title will give too much away. You know, it won't slow someone down. It might just make them say, oh, that's what that is, and just keep moving.
Well, I will say this about titling paintings, and I used to hate titling them, even though the only way I can finish is say a painting is in a state where I can walk away from it is once I have that recognition, like I recognize it. I can like say what it is. I can like write it down. It may be 3 pages, or it may just be one phrase, but it's fully recognized. And I think that's the power of titling, because I don't think titles flatten the experience with work that is as that comes from a process of observing carefully, because I do have a much stronger sense. I mean, I've been aware of it, but the way you've unpacked it for me really allows me to recognize the depth of observational experience in your work. So, you know, try to get along with titles. I think they're very helpful. And thank you so much, Claire.
Well, thank you all for being here. Truly. I think every artist, my favorite thing is to talk. One of my favorite things is to talk about art, and not just mine, but anybody's, you know, and to think about ideas behind the work and to analyze and think about what makes something good and how does your eye move around the painting and all those things we think about when we're looking. So having people to talk to about that, I appreciate it. So I appreciate everybody who came, and I'm glad for this opportunity.
Thank you, Claire. Esther, anything to add for this evening?
I don't have anything additionally, but I just wanted to say thank you to Claire for working with us and dealing with the CDs. And it's just been a pleasure to learn about your work and to hear you kind of go into more depth about it and where it comes from and what your process is. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're going to wrap it up unless there are any last minute questions, but we are over our time now. We are recording tonight, so you will in the future be able to look at this entire talk in case you came in late or left early or what have you. And I want to thank Claire. I want to thank Esther. I want to thank everyone who came tonight, and as well as the Blackball Project's executive committee and board of directors for helping to generally just support everything we're doing today. And if you do want to check out more Blackball Projects, viewing rooms, archives, galleries, etc., please go to our website, blackballprojects.com. You can even donate money there if you feel like it. We also have, like I said, we're going to have we have microgrants for 2023, which will be determined in a few months. We're going to have at least another viewing room later in the year for the microgrant winner. We're going to have potentially an in real life gallery show finally again, and who knows what else. So stay tuned. Thanks for everyone. Thanks everyone for checking in tonight and participating and asking your thoughtful questions. And we'll see everyone again soon.